Whether it be through sheer dumb luck in finding it, or just hearing the Moist Critical interview with Glorb, you've probably heard of this guy with his SpongeBob AI songs. And there's actually a pretty coherent story behind all of them. So, to begin with these stories, we have to start at square one with chapter 1.
Hey, Plankton, me chum. You're a kelp sucker.
Alright, to begin this era, we're going to have to go through only 5 songs. This being Mr. Swag's The Formula, Dankton's STD, Mr. Swag's Crab Walk, Sponge Ops Fun, and Dankton's KYS. Now, this kind of sums up the first era of Glorb, being the AI-generated videos of Glorb, and this is kind of his first entry point, especially with The Formula going kind of big at the time. This was like his big break in the timeline. But in terms of story content, we're not getting much here other than some basic back and forth disses, some interesting visuals to say the least. Not a lot of note goes on story-wise here, so we're just going to move on to the next chapter. Now, this era of the videos, when the beef really begins, really encompasses only another 5 videos, being The Bottom, KFC, Eugene, and Dumbbell. Now, one of these videos, specifically Dumbbell, is a little weird because it could theoretically be placed anywhere, but in terms of the timeline, I'm placing it where it is because at the end of Eugene, I'll put this on the screen, but at the end of Eugene, there is a teaser that the next song would have been Dumbbell. Theoretically, though, Dumbbell could be placed earlier in the timeline, although I'm happy where it is in terms of releasing date. Now, moving on with The Bottom, we're getting a lot of disses towards Dankton and him sleeping with his wife. This kind of being the beginning of what sets him off and leads to the creation of KFC, in where he brainwashes Patrick. So Patrick becomes brainwashed by this and then hops on the mic with Dankton. They produce this. Somewhere, I'm assuming in between The Bottom and KFC, Dankton was freed from prison, as at the end of Bottom, we're seeing him get thrown into jail. This could also just be generalized beef, although I do believe he was thrown into jail, broke out, kidnapped Patrick, and then put Patrick under experiments, which we see in the beginning of KFC, to mind control him. This then leads into by Sandy, where she goes on a rampage of dissing all of the men in Bikini Bottom, but especially Dankton. Now, it is to be noted that in the music video, we do see references to Miss Puff, but I'm going to scratch this off as he wasn't fully prepared at the time for how big his creation would become, so we're going to ignore the fact that Miss Puff is in this music video. Is then followed up by Eugene, which is arguably the best track in the whole chapter, but Eugene begins with a shooting at the Chum Bucket. There's obviously a huge notable difference in animation with Eugene. We can see his animation gets a hell of a lot better through this time. Eugene shows the epitome of the beef beginning, where there are shots fired and Karen is unfortunately killed in this. We'll get back to that later, but Karen is shot and killed at the beginning of this, which is announced by the Bikini Bottom News. And further through the song, we're getting references to the fact that yes, it is in fact canon that Patrick was brainwashed, with some of the lines such as, Patrick, he was brainwashed, but we got him back, yeah. This is also interesting to note that later throughout the music video, we're getting the first real Squidward bars, where he just goes straight onto the mic. This is actually a character who becomes super, super important later down the line, so it's important that we note that. But overall, this is a Mr. Krabs diss track towards Plankton. This showing just kind of the shots fired between the two and the first victim of this beef, which then leads us into the final one of this segment, which is Glorb's Dumbbell, which is Larry the Lobster, or ASAP Larry, and is a very Yeet inspired song, but overall the lyricism of it, this doesn't really show any importance towards the lore, although it is to be noted that in this video it's said that the formula is either related to Larry or is what made Larry so beefy, or the formula is Larry. It's very convoluted in terms of what is going on in this video. If you guys have any recommendations as to what's going on, I would love to see that in the comments. This then moves us into the next segment of Glorb, being Chapter 3.
That's my feet on the pavement.
The third chapter is probably the shortest, taking up only 2 songs, being Glorb's Sad Kini and Glorb's Kill Cam. These are 2 pretty basic, but still very good songs, with Sad Kini being a sad song written by Dankton about how he's sad that his wife is unfortunately dead. This is then immediately followed up by Kill Cam being a diss on the fact that Dankton wrote a sad song because his wife died. This chapter begins with Vengeance being the first shot at Karen coming back, this being her return and her terrorizing of the town. This music video ends with SpongeBob getting shot and sent to the ER, which is then immediately followed up with Ken Gangster's Cry, which is a sad country song style that just goes into the details of why SpongeBob is sad as Sandy leaves him at the beginning of the song, meaning that Sandy was dating SpongeBob this whole time. This is finally concluded with D&D being the final one of this saga, this also being 3, but very filled in terms of the 3. But D&D finishing it off with just a victory lap tour for Dankton and for Karen. Now, this is kind of its own thing. I'm going to qualify this as the end of Chapter 4. I considered putting this in its own category, but I feel like this is really just an epitome of like the conclusion of Chapter 4, being the end for this final battle kind of thing, where it kind of starts with SpongeBob coming in on the bullworm to hit this new giant mechanized Karen that has come back. He then amps up Gary, who then turns into a giant as well, to fight Karen. All of these brainwashed civilians from the victory lap are getting fought and shot at. So this is just kind of like Krabs, Sandy, Patrick, Squidward, and SpongeBob all fighting Dankton and getting him, like, stopping the evil and overall just beating him. This is kind of the death of Karen again, so Karen is dead now for a second time. But you'll see what happens with that in the next chapter, which is the casino arc is the newest and, as of now, the final arc or chapter in this story, being where Dankton opens up a casino. This starts with Mob Ties, where he comes back. This is our introduction to Puff Productions, or Mrs. Puff. This is then further continued throughout as we see him develop this casino, build up this casino from the wreckage of the chum bucket that was destroyed in the bottom 2. But we see him build up this casino, start making money, and really just go at all of the Krusty crew. This is immediately then followed up with Ocean's 11, which is a plot to rob Dankton's safe in his casino, where SpongeBob has Squidward distract Mrs. Puff on the cameras while they break in and steal all of the money. And finally, that is where that one ends, leading us to the newest Glorb video, which dropped just a few days ago as of the making of this video, being the bottom 3, which is just this ultimate fight between both Glorb's good guys being the Krusty crew and Glorb's bad guys being Dankton, and now Manta Ray, the Dirty Bubble, all of these Mermaid Man villains, because we're going to see Mermaid Man come in, and it's just an all-out brawl between like Mermaid Man and a bunch of superheroes, Krusty crew members, and a bunch of villains that Mermaid Man usually has to deal with. This is kind of just like the final arc And so far, as of now, this is where we have been left off, where Dankton drops a nuke in Bikini Bottom, I assume, and this is all we have so far. So now we just wait for more content from Glorb to come out and for us to analyze and add to this timeline. I really hope you enjoyed this video. This is kind of a new style for my channel and for me. I kind of want to start doing things like this in the future. If you guys would be interested, please leave a comment and subscribe, like the video. That helps out a ton. And just, I guess, come back for more when I have more. Thank you so much for sitting through this entire rant about SpongeBob AI tracks, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!